Hello guys, welcome to today's video. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about access modifiers in C#. Right? You can get access modifiers in almost in every object-oriented language, but I'm going to just focus on C# for this video. Basically, access modifiers are ways to restrict how your code is going to be used. Right? Like it sort of puts some boundaries on how your code or your classes can be used, right? Normally we know of private and public access modifiers, but there's a bunch of them. And then in this video, I'm going to talk to you about all the other ones you may or may not have heard of, right, in C#. Right, so let's jump into it. So over here, I have a simple C# project open here. This is called Modifier UI. It's a simple console app, right? And over here, I have the demo library, right, which is a class library that I have here, which also has some classes in it. All right. It can be a DLL, it can be like some separate project that you want to add. I just want to differentiate between the two different projects and how the assets across both of them actually work, right? So in order to be able to access some of the classes in this access demo is part of the demo library, right? So I'm going to add a reference of that project to Modifier UI right here. So add project reference, right? So I'm going to add demo library to that. Okay, so now we can access the stuff over here in program.css, which is part of the Modifier UI project. All right, so the first one we have here is public demo. So this is my class access demo. Now access demo, I made it a public class, meaning the class should be able to be accessed from everywhere, right? But then the methods in them is where the access modifiers come in, right? So the first access modifier we have is public, right? So the method is called public demo. All right, so let me jump into the modifier UI, the program.cs, and then let's see, right? So over here, this is my modifier UI. It's just a simple console line, console write line over here, right? This prints hello access modifiers to the console, right? So what we are going to do is you are going to instantiate a new access demo, right? Access demo. Okay, then maybe demo, right? Then we'll make a new access demo. Okay, all right. So let's fix this using demo library. So now we've imported it from the demo library namespace, right? The demo library namespace. So we have it here. So now let's see. We are going to see whether we can access public demo, right, from program.css. Now remember, when you use the public access modifier, what you are trying to say is that that method or property should be able to be accessed from everywhere, whether it's in the same project or it's not within the same project. Okay, so if I come here and I do demo dots, right? So you realize that in the list of recommendations, I have public demo, right, which is accessible. But every other thing over here, you realize that we are not getting IntelliSense for it. Okay, so you by specifying this public demo, we have restricted that, hey, we do not want to have access, we don't want other projects to have access to other methods in this particular project. Okay, so that's the one very good importance of public. It makes it very flexible. Normally, most developers, we default to public. We don't have to think about it too much. By getting to the end of the video, I'll explain to you why making all your methods or properties public by default isn't really a good practice. All right, I'll talk about it. We'll get there. No worries. Okay, so public demo, we see we can access it from here. So we can do public demo, right, and we'll be fine. Okay, so let's say in public demo we'll do console.write line hello from public demo. Okay, hello from public demo. So let's run the project and see. just real quick, just to show that it works. Okay, so right on my other screen we have hello from public demo. All right, so that actually works. All right, so let's close that and then let's comment this out. Okay, then let's go to the next access modifier. Right now we have the private demo. Also, guys, before I continue, I just want to let you know that once we are done going through all the access modifiers, I'll also brush through why and when we'll need each of these modifiers. Okay, so the private demo. Now, the private access modifier, you are saying that that particular method should only be accessible within the class, nowhere else. Like, you don't want to make it available to any other objects, whether or any other derived classes, right? This is very important. Okay, so over here, if I come to demo dots, you realize that if I try to do private demo, that will not work, and I have the red squiggly lines over there. Okay, it's not going to work, right? And the error message says access demo private demo is inaccessible due to its protection level. All right, so you cannot access it. Now I wanted to explain to you guys why you will need private or public getting to the end of the video, but I'm thinking I'll just explain it as I explain all the access modifiers, right? So for the public demo, like I said, for the public access modifier, you will need it when you are not really concerned about other objects accessing. So let's say you are doing a project, let's say a project that greets people, like you have this app that people enter their names and then they end up greeting people, and that greeting code, you put it in a public function such that anybody that tries to consume the class, they can just call it. So let's say you can have something like public void, right, greets people. Okay, all right, so you can say console.writeLine hello person. Okay, so then you have that particular method that everybody anywhere can access. Okay, so let's say you can say that anytime somebody signs up, wherever in your code, you can say greets people. Okay, and then it will call. So this is a method that is not really it doesn't break anything, it doesn't require any type of permissions or any type, it's not accessing any type of security information or stuff like that. Okay, that is when you use the public demo. Why do I keep saying public demo? That's when you use the public access modifiers, right? Okay, so guys, that's for public. Now for private, right? I used to wonder why we need something like private, because in my mind I'm like, okay, the source code is technically available to everyone. You know, like I don't really see what you mean by private, because then I can just come into the source code and then change it to public, right? But understanding why we need private sometimes is very important. Let's say you have something like a social security number, okay, or let's say a credit card number, right? So you have like string, let's say credit card number. Okay, and then maybe you have this credit card number here. Let's make this public string credit card number. And you have these random values over here. This isn't really a credit card number, this is a fake one, all right? But then you have a value like this, and then let's say you have this project, this class library that you built, right, that helps maybe people to process credit card information. Right now, you do not want to allow users of your library to just spit out the raw credit number information like that. Now, if I make it public like I made it here, then I can just come and do, let's say, demo.credit card number over there, and then get access to the entire credit card number, which you don't want access to. Maybe you want to mask the last 4 digits, or maybe you want to mask the first digit and then only return the last 3 digits, something like that, right? So you would make this private. Okay, you make this private, and then maybe you can create some type of property, okay, where you can public property that will allow you to actually get and set this thing without having to access this one directly. Okay, one of the benefits of private, one of the very key benefits of private is that it keeps in IntelliSense, for example, it keeps the suggestions very, very, very like understandable. People try to consume your code and immediately they know what is possible and what is not possible, right? Imagine that you need certain permissions before you can access the credit card number. Like the user consuming the code needs certain permissions before they can access your credit card number. Then they come here and then they start typing credit card number, and then because you made it public, they are able to access it without any issues, right? Then you have a problem. Okay, they may end up trying to retrieve it and then it may throw errors or stuff like that, and they wouldn't understand. Okay, but once you put this thing in a private modifier, then you sort of add some additional level of control as to what can be fetched and what cannot be fetched. It just makes the utilization of your classes a bit more easier and understandable. Okay, so enough of the private and public. Let's go to the next one, which is internal, right? Internal was something that used to trip me up a lot, all right, when I was starting. Guys, let's clear this one first. Okay, I just want to keep this really clean, right? So internal, what does the internal access modifier mean, right? The internal access modifier means that that particular method is accessible to objects within the same assembly. So like I said previously, we have a demo library project that can be like a class library. Maybe it's a particular library that you developed to perform a particular action, you know, like maybe it processes bank transactions, or maybe that library is in charge of doing some database modifications and stuff like that. Now you have this method within the class that you want it to be accessible to all other code related to that particular library, but you don't want it to be accessible to other projects that are not within the library. Okay, so let's say I have internal demo. Maybe instead of let's create another one. Let's say internal void process bank transaction. Okay, now you have this in your class library. Now you don't want this process bank transaction to be accessible to any other objects that is outside your class library, right? So let's say console.writeLine process bank transaction. Okay, so we have that right here. Now if I come to the modifier UI demo and I do demo dots, you see we don't have process bank transaction over there, right? It's not accessible. Like it's out. The modifier UI project is outside the demo library, so it cannot access it. Okay, and that is a very, very cool thing that we have, like a very cool feature that we have. But then if I should add a new class over here, let's say demo library, let me create a new class right here. Add a new class. Let's call this class so we have access demo, we have let's just call it test class.cs, right? So we have a new class, we call it test class, right? So let's even make this public class, right? So let's say over here I have this method. Let me just make it public, right? So let me say public void test method. Okay, right? And in this method I want to instantiate a new object for access demo, right? So I can come back and say access demo is equal to new access demo. All right, now when I do demo dots process, do you realize that now over here I have the process bank transaction correctly showing over here, right? So I'm able to access process bank transactions simply because the test class, as we see in the solution explorer, is in the same libraries, and that's what we call the same assembly as the demo library, so it's accessible. But anywhere outside that library you cannot get it. All right, if you try to access it from the modifier UI, it will not work. Okay, very important. Okay, so now let's go to the next one, which is, let me delete this. Okay, so now the next thing is the protected demo, right? That is the protect. I don't know why I keep calling the access modifiers by their method names, right? So we have the protected access modifier. Right now, for protected, it's you are saying that only like that particular method is only accessible within the class and derived classes, not objects. Okay, this can trip you a little, right? It tripped me a little in the beginning. So if I create a new object of that class, I cannot access that particular method which is protected. Okay, I cannot access it. But if I create a class that extends or that inherits from the access demo, then I can access this. All right, so this one is in a case where, for example, there's this particular logic that maybe you want all child classes to have, that you don't necessarily want this logic to be available to objects. Like objects shouldn't be able to call them. All right, maybe there's just there's this bootstrapping code that you have, or there's this particular thing that doesn't need to be accessed by objects. Then all you have to do is that you can make it protected. This way, only the derived classes, only the child classes are able to access this particular method. So I'm going to create another class over here. So I'll call it testing protected CS, right? Okay, so let's create another class, right? So this is an internal class, right? So let's do public testing. No, this constructor. Let me do public void test method. Okay, all right. So now once we try to do access demo, demo new access demo, right? When we do demo dots, you see we have access to public demo, we have access to internal demo, we have access to protected internal demo, which I'm going to come to that later. But we don't have access to protected demo, right? So now let's see how we can get access to protected demo. So over here we can do internal class extends from access demo, right? Immediately this now inherit from access demo, then we can get the protected demo. So you realize that over here now we have the protected demo, which is right here. Let me what is the name? Protected demo.protected. Oh, sorry about that. Totally sorry about that. So I can now call it like this, protected demo, right? To do whatever I want it to do. Remember we said that the protected is not accessible from objects. Okay, so then you cannot access it from object, but you can call it directly from any class that inherits from that particular class that has the protected. Okay, I hope I'm making some sense over here. Okay, so the that's for protected. Okay, like I said, for protected, normally you need it for cases where you need to maybe initiate some type of logic or some bootstrapping logic in your child methods without having to like objects don't need to know about it, right? In that case, you can use protected. Very, very beautiful. Okay. Then now we go to the next one, private protected. This can get a bit confusing because you are combining private and protected, you know, so it gets a bit tricky. But follow me here. Okay, so when we say the method is private protected, we are saying that when it comes to the assembly, like inside the code, it is private, right? But when it is when we come outside the assembly, it is private, but within the assembly is protected. Okay, so what do we mean? If I come to this program.cs, which is not part of the demo library assembly, I cannot access that private protected. I cannot access private protected from outside the assembly. So I can't say private protected. It won't work. It will break, right? But when I'm in the assembly, it's protected. So you are sort of able to do two things at a time. Hey, if it's inside the same assembly, then it should be, if it's outside the assembly, it should be private. It means like only, technically you are saying that only within the class should I be able to access this method, right? But if it's within the assembly, then okay, allow child classes to be able to access it, right? So if I come to testing protected and I come here, I can do private protected and it will work. Okay, I can do private protected and it will work perfectly. Okay, so let me just explain one more time just to make sure that you are clear. Okay, so private protected means that the method acts as private when it is not within the same assembly, when it is outside the assembly. Okay, so it means it acts like a private access modifier when it's not within the same assembly. But when you're within the same assembly or the same project, right, the same class library, whatever it is, then it acts as protected. Okay, so you are doing two things. We are specifying two access modifiers at a time. Now you ask, when do you usually need it? Now, when you are in a situation where you sort of want a bit of combination, you don't want to make it private such that other child items cannot access. You also don't want to make it protected, because once you make it protected, right, then it means that it can also not be private. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying. So what you have to do is that you can make it private protected such that when you do it that way, then only classes within the particular assembly can work, right? You make it protected, it means when I'm outside the assembly and I even just inherit or I even extend that particular class, I can still access it, and I still don't want to make it accessible in that particular vein, right? So that is when we use private protected. Now let's jump to protected internal, right? So protected internal, you are saying it's protected outside the assembly, right, but it's internal within the assembly. Okay, so this is I call this internal by default, okay, because over here when you are within the same assembly, it's sort of like accessible, because it's sort of a bit, sometimes I call it is a bit redundant, but it also makes sense if you think about it this way. If you make the access modifier just internal, that means that nothing outside the library can access it, okay, like we demoed already. But you want to make it internal, yes, though you also want to make sure that classes that extend this thing outside the library can access it. Then that way it becomes protected internal. Okay, so it's a bit of, you are creating restrictions, but you are sort of adding a little bit loopholes to your particular method. Private protected and protected internal, you don't see them much, but they are used. But in most OOP projects, you hardly come across this. They have like very, very narrow use cases where you actually need them, right? Most of the time you end up using public, private, internal, or protected. All right, or you make it private and then yes, they'll make it accessible through some public method, or stuff like that. So that really is how it is in the industry. Okay, so guys, I know this was a very tricky one, but I hope I could at least help you to get exposed to some of these modifiers and then what they do. It's good to know that these things exist, so that at least when you come across it, you won't be tripping up, or when you come across a problem that requires some of these things, you won't trip up, because they really, really, really do help. So I'm going to leave a link to this particular tutorial, the repo for this particular tutorial, so that anyone that wants to play around with it or exploit and see how it works, you can have it without having to write everything from scratch. Okay, so guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please like the video and subscribe. Just and then if I mis-explain anything, please just leave your feedback in the comment section, and then I'm really open to correction if I mis-explain anything, right? But I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye for now.